My name is Helen, a senior consultant in Colorado Springs. I was living in my daughter and son-in-law's guest house, securing my retirement fund while contributing $1,500 a month towards their mortgage. That was our arrangement until my grandson appeared, drowning in debt from wasting money on extravagant parties and foolish online wagers. All at once, I was supposed to rescue him to maintain the family's stability, even as he continued his reckless spending. I refused, but my daughter and son-in-law pressured me, insisting, "We're all in this together." One evening, the tension boiled over. My son-in-law's face grew flushed with anger, and he yelled, "Get out and never come back." My heart hammered in my chest as it dawned on me that this was the end. So, I departed, gathering my belongings and walking away without a backward glance. A few weeks passed before my daughter called, frantic, demanding to know why I had ceased making the mortgage payments. My response left them speechless. If you're interested in what I told them, stay tuned, because this story takes some incredible turns. Let me know where you're tuning in from in the comments, and don't forget to like and follow to see how this family conflict plays out. My life was settled until Noah, my grandson, arrived with a single duffel bag and a long list of justifications. I had been residing in the guest house on my daughter and son-in-law's property in Colorado Springs, dedicating myself to my career as a senior consultant at a respected firm. My work life consisted of developing proposals, securing client endorsements, and overseeing a critical project for a major national corporation. Every extra cent was funneled into my retirement fund, yet I was also shouldering a $1,500 monthly payment for my daughter and son-in-law's mortgage, an agreement we'd made that allowed me to live there without paying rent. It was a practical, if not luxurious, arrangement that helped me stay focused on my financial goals. I would often work late into the evening, refining presentations or analyzing data, always keeping my savings target at the forefront of my mind. My life was a disciplined cycle of work, save, repeat. I had even given up small luxuries to make my budget go further. Then, my grandson came crashing back into our lives. He had been let go from his job in another city and, rather than taking responsibility, he appeared on their doorstep smelling of overpowering cologne and burdened with a debt that was difficult to comprehend. He had squandered thousands on high-end fashion, late-night gambling apps, and buying drinks for people he barely knew. I overheard him boasting about a leather jacket he had just purchased for $800, while I was carefully managing my finances to help with the mortgage. He offered no apology, merely smiled and claimed he would handle everything shortly. I tried to have faith in him, but his history suggested a different story. I had witnessed this pattern before, back when he was a teenager, constantly asking his parents for money for emergencies that were invariably for concert tickets or bar tabs. I raised the issue at dinner one night, making an effort to keep my voice even. "He needs to find a job," I stated, slicing my chicken. "We can't continue to finance his poor decisions." My daughter's expression grew tense, and she placed her fork on the table. "He's just going through a difficult time," she replied. "We're all in this together." My son-in-law nodded in agreement, his jaw clenched as if I were the one acting irrationally. They had always been overly lenient with my grandson, their precious boy who, in their eyes, could do no wrong. I was the dependable one, the person who always met her obligations, so it was naturally assumed I would take care of the shortfall. They didn't state it directly, but the implication was unmistakable. I was expected to use my savings to help him. The very thought made my stomach turn. I had worked far too hard to see my future security vanish because of his irresponsible choices. But the pressure persisted. My daughter began making daily suggestions, dropping little remarks about how family should be the top priority and how my grandson just required a bit of help to recover. My son-in-law was more direct. "You're doing very well in your career," he would remark, as though my income was a communal resource. I attempted to reason with them, clarifying that my savings were intended for my retirement, not to settle his debts. However, every discussion concluded in the same manner, with them defending him and me holding my tongue to avoid conflict. My work also started to feel more burdensome. The project I was in charge of had a demanding deadline, and I was already feeling overextended. One afternoon, I made a mistake during a client call, confusing some budget figures because my mind was replaying my daughter's most recent attempt to make me feel guilty. My manager noticed and took me aside to inquire if I was all right. I managed a smile and assured her everything was fine, but it wasn't. I would find myself gazing at spreadsheets, calculating how much longer I could continue paying the mortgage while my grandson's expenses drained their resources. My savings account, which had been growing consistently, had now plateaued. Each time I checked the balance, I felt a sharp sting of resentment. I tried to speak with my grandson directly, hoping he would listen to reason. One evening, I discovered him lounging on the sofa, scrolling aimlessly on his phone. "You have to stop this spending," I said, my tone level. "I am not going to cover for you." He barely glanced up, mumbling something about a new job he was confident he would get. I pushed him further, inquiring about his debt, how much, who he owed, and when he planned to repay it. He just shrugged, said it was all under control, and then diverted the conversation to a party he had recently attended. I walked away, my hands trembling, knowing full well he had no intention of changing. The guest house, which had once been my peaceful sanctuary, now felt like a prison. I would lie awake at night, listening to the hum of the heater, questioning how I had become the family's financial safety net. My daughter and son-in-law's words echoed in my mind, "We're all in this together." But it didn't feel like a collective effort. It felt like it was me against his self-destructive behavior, with them cheering him on from the sidelines. I continued my routine, work, save, pay the mortgage, but the burden of their expectations was becoming unbearable. Something was bound to break. A week after my fruitless conversation with my grandson, I discovered a credit card statement that was not mine. It had arrived in the mail, mixed in with the guesthouse bills, addressed to me but from a bank I had never dealt with. My hands quivered as I tore it open. There were $5,000 in charges, bars, online gaming websites, a car rental I had never made. The account had been opened using my name and my social security number, but I had not applied for it. My stomach sank. I knew exactly who was responsible. My grandson's irresponsible habits had just exploded in my face. And now my credit, my entire financial future, was at risk. I charged into the main house, the statement crumpled in my hand. He was in the kitchen, warming up leftovers, behaving as if he didn't have a care in the world. "You used my name," I said, my voice quiet but piercing as I held up the paper. "You opened a credit card and charged $5,000. Are you out of your mind?" He froze for a second, then shrugged and leaned against the counter. "It's not a big deal," he said with a smirk. "I just needed some cash. I'll take care of it." His nonchalant attitude ignited my anger. "Take care of it?" I retorted. "You're destroying my credit. This is identity theft." He rolled his eyes as if I were overreacting and mumbled, "You have money. Just pay it for now." I was in disbelief. He wasn't just evading his responsibility, he was shifting the blame onto me for his own mess. I stood my ground. "You are going to fix this," I declared, moving closer. "Call the bank, tell them what you did, or I will." His smirk vanished, replaced by a scowl. "You're so selfish," he shot back, "always acting like you're better than everyone." The accusation stung, but I didn't back down. "This isn't about me," I stated. "You crossed a serious line. Fix it, or I'm reporting this as fraud." He took his plate and left the room, muttering under his breath. I remained there, my heart racing, the full weight of his betrayal sinking in. My name, my identity, was now entangled in his chaos. It was far worse than I had feared. That night, I contacted the bank, my voice firm despite the panic rising in my chest. The representative confirmed the account had been opened 3 weeks prior, linked to my personal information. I clarified that it wasn't me, and they marked the account for a fraud investigation, recommending that I freeze my credit. I spent the next several hours online, securing my accounts with Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, each action serving as a stark reminder of the depth of my grandson's irresponsibility. This was no longer just about money. My entire future was on the line. If my credit score plummeted, my retirement plans, already strained by the $1,500 I paid each month for the mortgage, could be completely derailed. The following day, I confronted my daughter and son-in-law, hoping they would finally grasp the gravity of the situation. We gathered in the living room, the atmosphere thick with tension. I presented the statement and explained the fraud, the $5,000 debt. He used my identity, I said, my voice calm but unwavering. This could ruin me financially. You have to make him stop. My daughter's face crumpled, her hands twisting in her lap. He didn't mean any harm, she said softly. He's just in a difficult situation. I stared at her, incredulous. My son-in-law leaned forward, his expression stern. You're blowing this out of proportion, he said. Just pay it off, and we'll handle him later. I felt as if I had been physically struck. They were not only defending him but also dismissing the fact that he had stolen from me and jeopardized my financial stability. You're not hearing me, I said, my voice rising. This is not just about the money. He committed a crime. My daughter shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. Don't say that about your grandson, she whispered. My son-in-law's gaze narrowed. You have a good career, he stated. You can afford this. Stop causing trouble. The injustice was searing. I was the one paying their mortgage, helping to keep the family financially stable, and yet I was being cast as the villain for calling out his criminal behavior. I left the room, my hands shaking, the statement still gripped in my fist. They had chosen him. Again. Work became a temporary refuge, but even that was starting to crumble. My boss had just given me a significant opportunity to lead a new major campaign for a national client, a chance to position myself for a senior partner role. The proposal was due in 10 days, and I was already falling behind, my ability to concentrate shattered by the turmoil at home. I would stay at the office late, staring at design mock-ups, but my thoughts would inevitably wander to the credit card statement, my daughter's excuses, and my son-in-law's dismissiveness. During a team meeting, I stumbled over a question about budget projections, my mind preoccupied with the fraud report I'd had to file. My boss gave me a questioning look, and I forced a smile, assuring her I would follow up. I couldn't allow this to jeopardize my career. Back in the guest house, I paced, feeling the walls close in around me. My grandson's actions were more than just a betrayal, they were a wake-up call. I could not continue living under their roof, by their rules, and subject to their blind allegiance to him. The guest house, once a sensible solution for my future, now felt like a cage. I had protected my credit for the time being, but how long before he tried something else? My daughter and son-in-law's refusal to hold him accountable was a clear warning. They would continue to expect me to clean up his messes, to sacrifice my own ambitions for his failures. The thought of remaining there, of allowing this toxic cycle to persist, was unbearable. I needed to find a way out, even if it meant starting completely anew. Days after the credit card incident, my son-in-law called for a family meeting that would alter everything. I entered the living room, my stomach in knots, sensing that a confrontation was imminent. My daughter sat on the sofa, nervously fidgeting, while my grandson was slouched in an armchair, scrolling on his phone as if nothing mattered. My son-in-law stood by the window, his expression severe, the evening light of Colorado Springs creating long shadows behind him. We have a problem, he announced, his voice low and tense. Your grandson's debts are out of hand again. He owes $10,000 from gambling apps and shopping sprees. You're going to cover it, Helen, or you're out of the guest house. The ultimatum struck me like a physical blow. Another $10,000, on top of the damage he had already done to my credit. My head was spinning, but I maintained a composed expression. I am not paying for his mistakes, I stated, my voice resolute, though my hands trembled by my sides. I have done more than enough for this family. My grandson didn't even bother to look up, his thumb still swiping across his phone screen. My daughter's voice, soft and pleading, broke the silence. He's trying, Helen, she said. He just needs a little assistance to get back on his feet. Family makes sacrifices for each other. Her words felt like a betrayal, highlighting their blatant favoritism. Sacrifices? I retorted, my tone sharper than I intended. I've been the one making sacrifices for years, keeping this household financially afloat. When is he going to take some responsibility? My son-in-law's eyes narrowed, his jaw tight. You have a good job, he said. You can afford it. Stop making this more difficult than it needs to be. The unfairness of it all burned within me. I turned to my grandson, who finally deigned to glance up, his expression one of complete indifference. You are dragging us all down, I said, my voice shaking with anger. You wasted $10,000 on trivial things, and I'm expected to fix it. Justify yourself. He shrugged, leaning back in his chair. It's not my fault things got difficult, he said, his voice laced with apathy. You're always so self-righteous, acting like you're perfect. His words were a direct insult, but I didn't waver. This isn't about me, I snapped. You crossed a line, and I am not cleaning up your mess again. He rolled his eyes and returned his attention to his phone, dismissing me completely. I turned to my son-in-law, hoping for some semblance of reason. He's not even trying, I said. Why am I the one who has to pay for this? My son-in-law stepped toward me, his voice escalating. Because you are part of this family, he yelled. Either you help, or you leave and don't come back. The room fell silent, his words hanging in the air. My daughter gasped, reaching for his arm, but he pulled away. My heart pounded with a mixture of shock and betrayal. I had anticipated resistance, but not an ultimatum that forced me to choose between my future and my home. Tears welled in my eyes, not from sorrow, but from the sharp sting of their decision. They were choosing him over me, yet again. My daughter tried to de-escalate the situation, her voice trembling. Helen, please, she said. We just need to stick together. He'll sort it out. I shook my head, a lump forming in my throat. You keep enabling him, I said. You're letting him ruin you, and I'm the one who pays the price. I looked at my grandson, still engrossed in his phone, completely unfazed by the turmoil he had created. You don't even care, I said, my voice breaking. He didn't reply, didn't even lift his head. I turned and walked out, my steps feeling heavy on the hardwood floor. The guest house felt colder when I returned, the walls seeming to press in on me. Their demand, $10,000 for his recklessness, was a burden I could no longer bear. I sat on my bed, my mind racing. My financial contributions to their home, my years of keeping things stable, meant nothing to them. They viewed me not as family, but as a financial resource. My grandson's debts, his indifference, their unwavering defense of him, it was a destructive cycle I couldn't escape while living under their roof. The guest house, once a practical sanctuary, was now a trap that bound me to their chaos. I thought about my career, the new campaign I was leading, the potential for a promotion to partner. If I stayed, I would lose more than just money, I would lose myself. I picked up my phone and called my oldest friend, Lindsay Wade. Her voice, warm and steady, cut through the fog in my mind. Helen, what's wrong? She asked. I told her everything, my son-in-law's ultimatum, the $10,000, my grandson's apathy, my daughter's excuses. My voice cracked as I confessed how it felt like my own family had abandoned me. They're choosing him over me, I said, the words tasting like poison. Lindsay didn't hesitate. You don't deserve this, she said firmly. You need to get out of there, Helen. For your own good. Her words struck a chord, reinforcing the thoughts I had been trying to suppress. Staying meant more of the same, more demands, more betrayal, and more of my dreams slipping away. I took a deep breath, staring at the walls of the guest house. Leaving would mean new expenses, a hit to my retirement savings, but staying would cost me far more, my sanity, my future, my peace of mind. Can we talk tomorrow? I asked Lindsay, my voice now steadier. I need to make a plan to leave. She responded immediately, her tone resolute. Of course. I'm here for you. For the first time that night, I felt a glimmer of hope. The guest house was no longer my home. It was a chain, and I was ready to break it. My son-in-law's ultimatum had drawn a line, but I was the one who would decide which side to stand on. The next morning, I met Lindsay at a local coffee shop to plan my exit. The cafe was bustling with conversation, but I was barely aware of it, my thoughts consumed by my son-in-law's ultimatum. I recounted the entire ordeal to Lindsay, his demand that I pay $10,000 for my grandson's debts and his final, furious order for me to get out. My voice trembled as I admitted how it felt to be turned on by my own family. Lindsay leaned in, her gaze unwavering. "You can't stay there," she said. "They are taking advantage of you. Come stay with me at my downtown apartment. It's not large, but there's room for you." Her offer was a lifeline. I hadn't even considered moving in with her, but the thought ignited a sense of freedom from the chaos at home. I sipped my coffee, calculating the numbers in my head. Renting with Lindsay would be about $1,000 a month, less than what I was contributing to the mortgage. My retirement savings, which I had carefully built, would take a hit. I had been so close, perhaps just a few years away from a comfortable, fully funded retirement. Leaving now would set that dream back, but staying meant more arguments, more demands, and my grandson's recklessness continuing to drain me financially and emotionally. I looked at Lindsay, her expression filled with concern. "It's worth it," I said, my voice firm. "I have to get out." Back at my office, I had lunch with a younger colleague, Colin Hayes, who had become a trusted confidant over the years. I told him about the explosive argument, how my son-in-law had essentially kicked me out over my grandson's debts. Colin put down his sandwich, his brow furrowed. "You are excelling at work," he said. "You're on track for that senior partner role. Don't let them undermine your success." His words resonated with me. My career was the one aspect of my life I had control over, the one area where I wasn't failing. "You're right," I said. "I need to prioritize myself for a change." Colin nodded, his voice calm but certain. "Leaving is the right decision. You can do this." That conversation solidified my resolve that I spent the next few days arranging my move in secret, taking care not to alert my daughter, son-in-law, or grandson. I looked at apartment listings online, with Lindsay's place as the primary option. Her apartment was a comfortable one-bedroom in the heart of Colorado Springs, conveniently located near my office, with a rent I could manage by adjusting my budget. I began to pack my belongings in the guest house, moving quietly to avoid raising suspicion. Clothes were packed into duffel bags, and books into boxes, all stored away in a corner of my closet. I labeled them as storage, in case my grandson got curious. He had been lounging around the main house, as oblivious as ever, while my daughter and son-in-law acted as if the huge fight had never occurred. I contacted a local moving company and booked a small van for the end of the week. The man on the phone quoted me $400 for a short move across town. I winced at the thought of my savings, but it was a small price to pay for my freedom. I maintained my normal routine to avoid arousing suspicion: breakfast with my daughter, brief conversations with my son-in-law about work, and even a forced smile for my grandson. Internally, I was a wreck, questioning every decision. What if I couldn't afford the rent? What if my career didn't progress as I hoped? But whenever I felt my resolve weaken, I remembered my son-in-law's voice, sharp and final: "Get out." I would not stay where I was not wanted. Lindsay helped me plan through late-night texts. She sent me a rental agreement to look over and promised to clear out half of her closet for my things. "We'll make it an adventure," she wrote, adding a series of cheerful emojis. Her optimism kept me grounded. I also visited my bank to separate my finances from any joint accounts. The bank teller assisted me in closing my access, ensuring my grandson could never touch another dollar of my money. It felt like breaking a chain. By Friday, I had a plan, a new address, a moving date, and a budget. I would move in with Lindsay, split the rent, and start rebuilding from there. The guest house, once my refuge, now felt like a burden I was eager to cast off. I was frightened, but for the first time in months, I felt like I was regaining control of my life. Saturday arrived, and the house was silent as my family had left to attend a relative's wedding. I stood in the guest house, my heart pounding but my mind clear, knowing this was my opportunity. Lindsay arrived in her familiar hatchback, and Colin pulled up minutes later in a rented moving van, its engine rumbling in the driveway. We had a limited time. My daughter, son-in-law, and grandson wouldn't be back until late in the evening. I had planned every detail to ensure a quick and efficient move. I was only taking the essentials: clothes, a few cherished books, my laptop, and a box of personal mementos. The rest, old furniture and trinkets, I left behind. It felt like shedding an old skin. Lindsay embraced me as she entered, her voice both bright and resolute. "Let's get this done," she said, picking up a duffel bag. Colin, always the pragmatist, began loading boxes into the van, his sleeves rolled up. "You're doing the right thing," he said, carefully placing my laptop case inside. Their support was my anchor as we worked. We moved quickly, carrying bags and boxes through a light morning rain, and the van was filled in less than an hour. I kept glancing toward the main house, half expecting my grandson to appear and cause a scene, but the house remained quiet. By noon, we were heading to Lindsay's apartment in central Colorado Springs. The drive was only 15 minutes, but it felt like crossing into a new country. Her place was a cozy one-bedroom with eclectic furniture, but it was warm and vibrant with her personality. We carried my things up the narrow staircase, with Colin joking that he would need a gym membership after this. Lindsay had cleared space in her closet, pushing her own clothes to one side. "Plenty of room," she said with a grin. By 3 o'clock, everything was unpacked. My clothes were hung, my books were stacked on a borrowed shelf, and my laptop was plugged in on the kitchen counter. It wasn't much, but it was mine, free from the weight of my family's demands. I returned to the guest house for one last check, standing alone in the empty space. The bare walls stared back at me, and for a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of loss, not for the place itself, but for the peaceful life I had hoped to have there. I shook off the feeling and sat at the small desk, taking out a sheet of paper. My hand trembled slightly as I began to write. "To my daughter and son-in-law," I started. "I am gone. I have been paying $1,500 a month for your mortgage, but you told me to get out. I am no longer responsible for this family, and especially not for my grandson's debts. I am done." I kept the note brief and direct, with no room for misinterpretation. I folded the paper, left it on the desk, and locked the door behind me. It felt definitive, like closing a chapter of my life. Driving away, I was overcome with a wave of relief, as if a heavy knot in my chest had finally loosened. For the first time in months, I could breathe freely. Lindsay's apartment was not my dream home, but it was a new beginning, a place where I was accountable only to myself. I thought of my savings account, no longer being drained to pay for someone else's irresponsibility. The memory of my grandson's carelessness and my family's blind support still stung, but it was in the past now. I glanced in the rearview mirror, watching the guest house shrink in the distance, and let out a shaky laugh. I had done it. I was free. But as the initial euphoria subsided, a flicker of anxiety crept in. What would happen when they returned? My daughter would likely cry, my son-in-law would be furious, and my grandson, he would probably just shrug it off as he always did. I could already hear my son-in-law accusing me of abandoning them, and my daughter pleading for me to come back. The letter was clear, but would they even bother to read it? Would they understand? I pushed these thoughts away, concentrating on the road ahead. Lindsay and Colin were waiting at the apartment, ready to celebrate with pizza. Their friendship and laughter would silence the doubts, at least for tonight. I pulled into the parking lot, the van's engine ticking as it cooled. Lindsay waved from her balcony, her smile radiant. Colin was already inside, setting up a chair for me. This was my new life, not perfect, but it was mine. The letter lingered in my thoughts, its words a definitive boundary. I had meant every single one of them. My family had made their choice. And now, I had made mine. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, it felt like it truly belonged to me. 3 weeks later, my daughter's desperate texts began to light up my phone. "Helen, we're in serious trouble," the first one read. "The bank is threatening foreclosure. Please call." I stared at the screen, my coffee growing cold on the kitchen counter of Lindsay's apartment. They had found my letter and realized I had stopped paying the mortgage contribution. A notice from the bank had arrived, warning of foreclosure if they missed another payment. It gave them 30 days before they would lose the house. My stomach churned, not with guilt, but with a strange combination of pity and resolve. I had supported them for far too long. My daughter called that evening, her voice trembling. "Helen, we need you," she pleaded. "Just pay the mortgage for a little while longer. We'll figure something out." I took a deep breath, standing by the window of my new home, watching the city lights of Colorado Springs twinkle below. "You told me to get out," I said, my tone even but firm. "I am not responsible for your choices, or for his." She begged, her words tumbling over one another. "Your son is trying, but he needs more time." I interrupted her. "I'm done cleaning up his messes. You made your choice." I ended the call, my heart pounding but feeling lighter. I had drawn a line, and I would not cross it. News reached me through a cousin. My grandson hadn't changed at all. He was still avoiding work, accumulating more credit card debt, and leaving his parents to deal with the consequences. Their financial situation was collapsing. Late notices were piling up not just for the mortgage, but for utilities, car payments, and even his old gambling debts. The $10,000 my son-in-law had demanded I cover was only the beginning. My grandson's recklessness had plunged them deeper into financial ruin. The cousin confirmed that the bank was serious about the foreclosure. Their home was on borrowed time. I felt a pang of sympathy imagining my daughter's anxiety and my son-in-law's anger, but I pushed it away. They had enabled him, and now they were facing the repercussions. At their home, things had reportedly become even worse. My daughter and son-in-law were constantly arguing, something they had rarely done before. The cousin described intense fights, with my son-in-law blaming my daughter for coddling their son, and my daughter accusing him of pushing me away. They couldn't agree on how to handle him. My son-in-law wanted to cut him off completely and force him to be independent. My daughter insisted on giving him yet another chance. Their arguments filled the house, creating a fracture in the foundation of the family they had always claimed was so strong. My grandson, oblivious as always, continued his spending, promising he would resolve everything soon. He never did, and they were sinking. Meanwhile, I was building a new life. Lindsay's apartment had become my sanctuary. The cozy space, with its creaky floors and mismatched dishes, felt more like home than the guest house ever had. At work, I had dedicated myself to the major ad campaign I was managing. The long nights, countless revisions, and a nerve-wracking pitch meeting all paid off. The client was thrilled, and my boss summoned me to her office a week later. "You're our new senior strategist," she said, a rare smile on her face. The promotion came with a significant raise, enough to quickly rebuild my savings, even with the new expense of rent. I left her office with a swelling sense of pride. For the first time, I was moving forward, not just trying to stay afloat. I had not spoken to my daughter, son-in-law, or grandson since that last call. I had blocked their numbers, not out of malice, but out of self-preservation. Every text and every plea felt like an attempt to drag me back into their chaos. I checked in with Lindsay, who continually reassured me that I had done the right thing. "You're thriving," she said one evening over takeout. "Don't let them pull you back in." Colin echoed her sentiments at work, giving me a high five when he learned of my promotion. Their support anchored me, reminding me that I didn't need my family's validation to be complete. Looking back, I understood the lesson with perfect clarity. Establishing boundaries was not selfish, it was an act of survival. My family had manipulated me, using guilt to make me carry their burdens, but I had finally broken free. Their choices, to coddle my grandson and to disregard my sacrifices, had consequences. The threat of losing their home and the arguments tearing them apart were their burdens to bear now, not mine. I felt stronger, not because I had won some battle, but because I had chosen myself. My new life wasn't perfect, but it was mine, built on my own terms. To everyone who has followed this journey, thank you for listening. It's never easy to walk away from family, to draw that line in the sand, but sometimes it's the only way to protect your own peace. What would you have done if you were in my position? Please share your thoughts. I would be very interested to hear them. Your support has meant the world to me.